NC State family, it's time for an honest look at your sports world. Let's get you hooked up for Pack Therapy, presented by First Horizon Bank. Here are your hosts, Tim Donnelly and Wolfpack football legend Mike Glennon.
Pack Therapy, the podcast. The regular season is over, and we are joining to kind of recap the whole thing, including a 35-30 victory over the Tar Heels for NC State to end the season. Bowl eligibility puts lipstick on the pig. Everybody's feeling good. I'm Tim Donnelly, Mike Glennon, my co-host, former NC State quarterback, longtime NFL quarterback here as always. We'll get to your questions in the second half of the episode, but as always, I'll remind you at the top of the episode to head to our YouTube, 99.9 The Fan. You can find the video of this episode if you're listening on some other podcast app. And if you just go to that YouTube, you can comment in the under the video with questions, comments, really anything. And there's a good chance Mike will answer your question the next time we do one of these, which will be in a little bit. So, Mike, we'll start with the rivalry win. Do you want to take a victory lap? You want to talk some trash? You want to, make a wine and cheese comment about UNC? How far you want to take it?
I'll just say that it is, the season, you kind of had a bad taste in your mouth, and it's funny how just this one win feels like the whole NC State fan perspective changed. It's like, okay, it wasn't that bad. we as long as we beat them, it feels a lot better. And I think that NC State played well, and I mean, Carolina honestly played well too. It was a good game. Came down to the end, and it kind of felt like one of those games of whoever had the ball last was going to win, the way that second half was going. But just a great win, and I loved the end of the game as well. After the game, I mean, you win the game, or I should say the other way. You lose the game, get off the field. It's over.
All right. Well, I mean, let's. There's two conversations you just started. The first is how much does that win kind of mask the stench of the season? The other is, there was a fight after the game because State went and grabbed their flag and wanted to plant it at the middle of Kenan Stadium. Is where do you come down on that? Should flags be banned? Should the players be suspended for life? Is there a $400,000 fine? I think most people agree, and you can correct me if you want to jump in and really go off the wall. Most people agree you can't be getting in fights after games. You can't be throwing punches. It's stupid, and I will say this 100 times, stupid to throw a punch at someone wearing a helmet. But how do you stop that without not allowing everything you just said?
Well, I think they're going to start, as I believe they did, they fined the university. Mm-hmm. But I think you find the coach, you get in the coach's pocket, he's probably going to tell the guys, hey, after the game, let's keep our hands to ourselves. They're getting into my pockets if you guys do something. So I don't mind the flag planting. It's like, it's a pretty innocent, it's not violent, it's not physical, it's not any of that. It's just planting the flag. And now, NC State, if you're going to plant the flag, you better back it up next year when UNC comes in town, because you can guarantee they're going to do it on your turf. So I'm for it. If you lose a game, get off the field. You lost. That was your chance. What Michigan and Ohio State, it's like Ohio State players are pushing around like what looked like an equipment guy stealing, getting back the flag. Like, come on. He's just getting back his flag. I think you had your chance during the game to win it. After the game, get off the field.
Here's and I've been workshopping this. Every rivalry needs a trophy. To me, like, the thing that you need is something to do after you win the game. And it's become, after you win the rivalry game, you run over, you grab a flag, you run to the middle of their field, and you plant it. If there was a trophy to run over and grab and hold up for your fans, like, that's what everyone would be doing. And you see it, like Paul Bunyan's axe and the wheel and the bell and all these things across college football. If you have a trophy, you just need – when you win the game, particularly in your opponent's stadium, you deserve 15 minutes to gloat. Like, to the winner goes the spoils. When State wins at UNC, like, you can't run to your student section because you don't have one. You need something to do. So I think there should be a trophy for every rivalry game, and then you run over, you grab the trophy, and that's what you do rather than the flag.
I'm for the trophy. I think that's a great idea. I have a feeling this flag thing is here to stay for a little while. I don't know if it's because of social media, because it's all over ESPN. Everyone's seeing it. So I think it's going to stay. But then I look back and I'm like, what did we do? We went 4-1 against UNC. And I think we just went across the field and kind of shook their hands. Yeah. And it was like the end of it, which is kind of, you look back and it's like, man, I feel like we should have done more than just that.
Well, social media wasn't as prominent and TikTok wasn't a thing. So we'll touch on that throughout the show, because looking at the comments on our videos and everything, there are strong opinions in a bunch of different directions. Last thing I'll say right now, though, I don't think it makes literally any player like a horrendous person. If the other team planted the flag and you hate the other team, I really just don't think it's – and this is for the state UNC rivalry, for every other – I don't think it makes the player that did it like the worst, classless, no this, no that. And if you went over and got mad and you initiated a shoving match, you're probably emotional from – like, I don't think anyone is – doesn't show your true colors at all. So relax with all of the personal barbs. Let's talk about the game. And by the way, a ton of news. CJ Bailey committing to the Savage Wolves Collective, sticking around at NC State. Casey Concepcion expected to enter the portal. All of that happening since the win over UNC, and we'll get to it. But looking at the win over UNC, 35-30, love that the offense scored at the end when they needed to. I was actually surprised they scored. I thought they might have sat down at the 1 yard line and use some time. But a win is a win is a win is a win. I don't think you can let that win mask the stench of the season, though, right? Like it's a 6-win season, and you needed to beat a team with a lame duck head coach at the buzzer in the last game of the year to go to a bowl game. I still think the 30,000 feet up in the air view is this needs to be an offseason of change, even though right now you are probably feeling high and you're wearing your red a little bit more prominently, in the office when your buddy usually wears the Carolina blue.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, overall, the expectations of the season, it would, if we're giving it a pass-fail, it's a fail. It just wasn't good enough. It was a good ending to beat Carolina, go to a bowl game, but the 6-6 is not the standard that Dave Doran has created at NC State. So, to me, this was not a successful year. Yes, there was some good that came of it, particularly with CJ Bailey, with Hollywood Smothers, with some of the other playmakers, and there's a lot to build on, and you hope to see it grow and get better. But all in all, this win, get into a bowl that really doesn't even matter. To me, it was not what anyone wanted, and the coaches need to do a lot of reflecting and figure out the path forward. But I think getting CJ Bailey back is promising for the future, and I think will help with the portal, will help he had a great year, and he's only going to get better.
I think the first thing you have to figure out is Robert Anae, and if not, who's going to be the guy calling plays for CJ Bailey, which, Dave Doran, he's figured out how to consistently beat UNC, and in that rivalry, it matters. I actually think what UNC did, firing or announcing that they were firing Mack Brown before the game, the week of the game, kind of served its purpose, because Dave couldn't be super salty Dave after the game, because it would have felt like, kicking the 70-plus-year-old fired coach rather than him, drumming up support. So we didn't really get the clip, the soundbite, those SOBs or POSs or anything else like that from Dave Doran. Partially that means this offseason is going to be a different one. It's going to be more difficult to raise funds. It's going to be more difficult to, even with CJ Bailey committing, maybe be the belle of the ball in the portal. But all of that, and I don't think Tony Gibson's going anywhere either, the defensive coordinator, all of that starts with who's running the offense, right? Because if CJ Bailey might commit back because he loves his team and he loves Raleigh and he loves State and they gave him the chance and he loves Doran and all of that. If I'm somebody out there in the portal, I'm not committing to a school until I know what style of offense they're running, who's going to be calling the plays, and what kind of situation I'd be walking into.
Yeah, I mean, as of now, we don't know if there's going to be any changes on the coaching staff.
If it's Robert Anae, I do think, and this is not a good sign, you have to come out and say it's Robert Anae. And I've made that joke a bunch of times, but when nobody asks and you have to go out and confirm that you're not firing somebody, not the best situation to be in. But I think you would need to do that if you're going to stick with him, just to let everybody know that the stability's in place.
Yeah, it'll be kind of. I'm sure we'll know more in the next couple of weeks. I mean, Tony Gibson looks like he removed his name from the Charlotte head coaching job.
Signed a 3-year extension last offseason.
Marshall job's open, West Virginia, and he has ties to kind of that area. Not saying he's leaving, I have no idea. But, I think offensive coordinator will be interesting. And I don't think this is a path that's going. As good as C.J. Bailey committed to coming back, I don't think there's anything that's really holding him contractually obligated. It's not like a NFL player that signs a contract they're in. Like, I think he could transfer tomorrow. I think he could transfer 6 months from now. He could. So
I think it's more like
I'm not saying he's doing that, but, you never know with changes that can or may not happen, how it could affect next year.
I've been having this conversation all day around the office. So for those of you that missed the news, C.J. Bailey, true freshman quarterback, depending on what metric you look at, might be the best true freshman quarterback in the country this season. Announced, along with Savage Wolves, the collective that supports NC State football, that he is committed back for next year. He's not going anywhere. I've been having the same conversation you just brought up. I don't know what that means, other than like a handshake and you look him in the eye and you say like, hey, that money you offered, I want it and I'm going to stay. And they go like, lovely. And then you go about your day the next day. It's like, I think it's just a handshake agreement, even if something was signed, because pay for play in an NIL deal is still against the rules. You can't sign a contract saying you get this money, but it is a contractual requirement that you play for NC State and no one else. No other school can do that either. I think there are ways you might be able to, and this is just me brainstorming, practically do that. Like, hey, every Monday during the season, you have to be at a Boys and Girls Club in Raleigh. And then it's like, well, you can't be doing that if you're playing at,
I don't
Ohio
even know
State.
if they're doing that anymore. Like, I feel like it truly is pay for play.
I would put it in the contract just so, if you're not fulfilling those obligations, you're probably playing somewhere else. And then the money, it's very difficult to figure out. But basically what I came down to is this. I think it's more like a contract that you sign in like 9-to-5 jobs, where it sets up the parameters, it sets up the pay and the bonus structures and everything else. And you are like, you're signing a contract. Might be some kind of non-compete if you're not in a free-to-work state. But you can, like, a 9-to-5, you can leave. You can go do something else. I got 2 years left on my contract. I'm gonna go talk to my boss and just say like, hey, this isn't working out. I family stuff, I need to leave. Like, if that happens, I don't think anything is handcuffing him to state right now.
Now, I wonder if that changes with the revenue share. Once it's coming from the school, I wonder if it is more contractually binding.
Could be.
I think this is like the biggest news in college sports that's not being talked about enough is this $20 million or so that's going to be passed around. I think that's completely going to change what college football looks like.
Speaking of hiring, speaking of change, and that when I say this is an off season to change, what I mean is, if I'm a state administrator, if I'm a state booster that gives the type of money that makes my opinion worth something, I'm going like, all right, that season wasn't good. What are you doing different? Like, I need to see something. If Dave Doran's the guy, all right, Dave, what's going on? Like, what was the problem and how are you fixing it? I think one of the things that I would entertain is hiring a GM. The headline was Andrew Luck is now the GM of Stanford, but you brought up the $20 million. Hasn't been officially approved yet, but the way that the structure has been explained to me is schools will be able to revenue share, meaning pay players directly from the university, student athletes in total, a little over $20 million. With 70 to 75% of that, depending on the final language, allowed to be completely focused on just one sport. You can't put the whole $20.5 million on football, but you can put 70% of that. That means you're essentially, if you're spending with the big boys, spending to the max you're allowed, you're going to have $15-16 million to spend. I don't know if coaches are ready to do that, right? We kind of saw it last year with State, where they went out and spent big in the portal. We don't know the numbers. We don't see how much Zeke Correll, who's third-team All-ACC, or Grayson McCall, or Noah Rogers, or any of these guys brought in, but didn't work out well. Wasn't a great free agent class for NC State, even though they had their hits. You might need a GM to run that part of the game.
Well, they do have the GM, Andy Vaughn. I'm not sure exactly what his roles have been as far as, dealing with paying players, but they have the role that kind of
true. Assistant AD general manager is his official title. More
old school, just director of recruiting, but now I think he's more also overseeing the portal and all of that. Now, I think whether it's Andy Vaughn, whether it's Dave Doran, there's going to need to be a role of who becomes the salary cap guy. Mm-hmm. That's what they have this in the NFL. Every team has a GM who works hand in hand with the salary cap guy, and their job is to figure out how they want to divvy up that salary cap. And to your point, I mean, this is $15 million potentially to give out to football, and you would hope that we would use the 70% on football. Break it down by who brings in, whoever the pie is of what brings in the revenue to NC State. That's what should go where this money should go to. So, $15 million to give out is a lot of money, and we talked about it off air. NFL quarterbacks get roughly 10 to 20% of that typically. So
of their salary cap, which that's $2+ million if you're looking at it. Just a ratio of how much the quarterbacks.
And why I think it's going to completely change college football is I think it's going to create so much more parity because, yes, Ohio State will still have their collective. So let's say Ohio State's bringing in $15 million from their collective, $15 million from – they got $30 million.
Yep.
But say NC State's bringing in $15 million from the revenue share and a couple million to get us up to close to 20. $20 million compared to $30 million, yeah, it's a $10 million gap, but it's still way better than $5 million compared to $15 million.
Yep.
So I think, around all of college football, talk about schools that don't have big collectives – now guys are going to want to go there because would you rather go to Alabama and get $100,000 or would you rather go to Wake Forest and get $250,000? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's going to completely change and create a whole lot more parity, just like the NFL.
Which brings me to the transfer portal giveth, the transfer portal taketh away. NIL giveth, NIL taketh away. KC Concepcion expected to enter the portal. I can't say I'm surprised, but it is a talented player that you developed, you brought from a non-5-star, and he's going to have 5-star opportunities in the transfer portal, mostly off the tape of his freshman year. But that's something that used to not happen, right? You used to have a down year. All right, well let's hit the weight room. Let's get you locked in for your junior year. Now down year after a big freshman year, he's gone.
Yeah, can't say I was surprised either. I mean, I felt like the writing was on the wall between just everything that kind of transpired this season, between his production, his body language, between his brother decommitting and going to Kansas State. Does that mean he's going to Kansas State? I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he ends up there. Do I like to see him leave? No. I mean, I don't think you ever want to watch an NFL caliber player just walk out of your building. Now, do I think it's the end-all, be-all? No. I think there's plenty of guys in that receiver room that can make plays. And, I would have liked to see him play, but I don't think it's that big of a deal either.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, questions from you all. Again, if you want to run to our YouTube right now, you can leave comments, questions, whatever you want for Mike, and there's a good chance you'll see it picked and asked on our next episode of Pack Therapy. It's coming up right after this. Welcome back into Pack Therapy. It is the second half of the show, and for our loyal listeners out there, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you know what's coming your way. Questions from the comment section for Mike. YouTube comments are where we find most of these. Occasionally, somebody tracks me down on social media or my personal email, and I ask those as well. We'll start with this. At Scott, this actually came in before the game, but I think it's an appropriate question because you don't have to answer it. We all saw the answer, but it you'll see what I'm getting at. Scott Dawson dash a whole bunch of letters and numbers. Criswell has looked bad the last 2 weeks. Under pressure, he folds. So it'll come down to, can State stop Hampton? The answer to that question was no, but the answer was also didn't come down to that. Almost did, but you were able to overcome it. How frustrating was it for you to watch and go, they're getting it to one guy. He's every time he touches it, he's getting 8, 9, 10, 50 yards. Like defense He's the guy on the scout team that you put the penny on and say, this is Omarion Hampton. You know where he is. Like, why couldn't the defense sell out to stop that guy?
I think he's just an exceptional player, and you can only slow down a guy that's likely going to be, maybe starting on Sundays next year so much. So I think, they did what they could against him. He's going to break away from time to time. I actually think Criswell played pretty well too. I don't think they lost the game because of the way the quarterback played. I mean, he went for almost 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I thought they had a great play call to take the lead at the end, the little shovel pass to Omarion Hampton. It was kind of like they scored too quick, and should he have gotten down? I would say no, because at that point it was what was the score? It gave them a 1-point lead.
Yeah.
So then you look like a complete idiot if you slide at the 1 and then you go get stuffed 4 times at the goal line and don't get in.
If a field goal would have won it, I think he would have gone down. Yeah.
So, NC State's defense I thought looked okay. They looked good in the first half, but the second half, big plays started hitting. In the pass game, Omarion kind of got hot and made some plays as well. End of the day, you get the win. So no one's talking about the shovel pass as much as we probably would have if that ended up being the game winner.
The hard part is this, because obviously Omarion Hampton, when he beats you, you feel dumb because it's like that's what they have. That's their offense. How did you not stop them? But they had I think it was a sophomore in-state recruit, Culliver, the wide receiver, had like 5 catches all season. He had 2 catches for 96 yards and a touchdown. So it's not like we can ignore everybody else. It's it's still college football. You got to guard everybody, and you can't put 8 guys on Omarion, even though it did feel at times like you should have put 8 guys on Omarion. And like you said, you were able to overcome it anyway. This comes from @ProBallerSurf. Looking back and knowing what we've learned this season, what was the right order of wide receivers? Who should have been the number 1 wide receiver and on down?
I still think it's Casey Concepcion. I mean, he's a good player. Like, it's not like the talent has gone away. I just think they ended up forcing it to him too much, and I didn't like the way he kind of projected himself. Now, maybe in practice in the locker room, he was great. From my eye, watching from the stands, I didn't love the way he kind of carried himself. Now, I think that's also somewhat the blessing of him leaving is next year all these guys can play. Will they all come back? I don't know. Noah Rogers, I think, showed his potential. I think we also saw 2 crucial drops before the unbelievable catch he had. Wesley Grimes, he showed flashes as well, also kind of caused an interception early in the game, kind of inside released on that go route. Justin Jolie, to me, was the kind of steady Eddie that you could always rely on. And then the young guys as well, Terrell Anderson, and I think there's reason to be excitement. I still think Casey Concepcion was the most talented receiver on this team.
First of all, Justin Jolie wasn't even an honorable mention All-ACC pick. Not first, not second, not third, not honorable mention. That frustrated me. I think he's good enough to at least get also receiving votes. When you look at the wide receivers, I think the part of it is they got very infatuated with the new. One of the ones who I think started the season kind of off our radar and I think should have been more on the, hey, let's get him a couple touches every game path was Dakari Collins. I thought he was a really good player. I thought Wesley Grimes got lost at time, the transfer from Wake Forest. Part of the maybe the issue is you had these headliners like Casey Concepcion, like Noah Rogers, who you were forcing the ball to because, hey, we've got these Ferraris, we want to go drive them fast, when there were other guys that could have made the plays until those guys got going. It was frustrating to not see everybody clicking on the same page for really any portion of the season. I picked this one mostly just because of the screen name, because it might be you at Mikey_gun90, which
I was born in '89.
Oh, where are you? Look at that. Never mind. Just by a couple of weeks.
My burner account, though.
Mikey, how funny would that be if your burner was Mikey Gun 90? I'll change the year by 1 so they won't suspect me. This is more of a bigger picture question. Is Miami the only hope for the ACC in the playoff? Coming from Mikey Gunn.
Well, now it sounds like Clemson can get in with a win, right? It's automatic.
Clemson can get in with a win.
I saw last night.
SMU might get in even with a loss.
But then did you see that the playoff committee guy said that it could be used against them if they lose, which feels so wrong that he said all the other teams can't do anything to get in, but SMU, it could count against them if they lose.
Should we go full conspiracy theory here? This comes from David Hale, who covers the ACC for ESPN, another former Delaware grad. Shout out to Dave. He said, what's stopping the ACC from saying everybody on SMU got COVID? Not playing in the ACC championship, putting Miami in the championship, because Miami might need another big win to get in. And then Clemson and Miami are playing for the second entry into the college football playoff for the ACC, with SMU at 11-1, just kind of standing pat and saying, "Hey, we're in. We're not going to worry about it."
Right. I just think it's funny how we thought that this. I wouldn't say people thought it, but it was always, the committee got it wrong with the 4 teams, and now we're having this huge discussion about the bottom end of it. If I'm SMU, I obviously want to get in the playoffs, but if I'm SMU and don't win an ACC championship and lose in the first round of the playoffs, I would rather have the ACC championship than make the playoffs and lose. So I know it's a little hyperbole, but for SMU, it would just be a shame if they lose this game and don't get in and get punished because of playing in the ACC championship. I feel like the playoffs should pretty much be set. You shouldn't be able to go down because of what happens in your conference championship.
I hear that. I also then it becomes sometimes like they award the Heisman before the national championship, and you end up with Reggie Bush over Vince Young, and it's like, well, that seems really foolish in hindsight. If you locked in SMU as they can't, and then they get beat by 50, you'd be sitting there going, I really wish they did this after the ACC championship, because there's no way that team should take Miami's spot in the college football playoff, or some other deserving team. The ACC, by the way, gets no respect, and we can have that argument as much as we want. But I'll say this, for SMU's sake, since the college football playoff rankings have started coming out, so since they started the four-team college football playoff, every single one-loss team that went into a conference championship game and lost has finished in the top 11 in the country. So that would say with 100% certainty that if they lose, they'll fall, but not out of the top 11. The caveat to that is the furthest any of them did fall was 6 spots. So those teams happen to be, 4th in the country and fell to 10th. If SMU were to fall 6 spots, they would fall out. So maybe it's not as 100% as the original stat says. The ACC needs to. I'll say that for NC State and for other ACC schools, for your futures, for the strength of the conference, you need 2. You need at least 2 teams to get in. 1 at large has to be worthy, whatever it takes to get that to happen. Pack Nation 1977 asks this as we continue to answer questions sent for Mike. What is Davin Van's legacy at NC State? Great athlete. Seems like everyone loves him. Hasn't put up elite production.
I think he's been pretty dang productive. I mean, during the game, you watched it, they said he was leading the country in forced fumbles.
Yes, I looked up the stats. 20 sacks over his career, 6.5, kind of the individual season high. Forced fumbles, kind of a weird stat, right? It's I don't know if that's something that, if luck is involved. But I like the legacy partially is tough because there's a lot of really, really good defensive players in State's history. He's not going like Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I don't think he's, we're not talking in the class of Bradley Chubb and guys like that, but I think he can fall in the line of, some of the really good players like B.J. Hill or Contavious Street, some recent guys that are still playing on Sundays.
4 years from now, he's wrapping up his rookie contract after being a mid-round pick. Is his legacy that is there enough clout for him to be like an alpha wolf down there on the field?
I would think so. I mean, it's hard to to say it all. He was a very good, productive player for NC State. I mean, I think he's a guy people will remember who Davin Van was. He wore number 1. He made some really big plays, and I would argue that forced fumbles aren't luck. Fumble recoveries are luck.
Sure, once they get put on the ground.
But if he's leading the country in that, and he's been, it seems like a great guy off the field. We saw what he did for the food drive and the hurricane
victims.
So I think that's part of his legacy as well. I just don't think, he's not in the Mount Rushmore of, we're talking Mario Williams and Bradley Chubb and guys like that.
Peyton
Clearly,
Wilson.
no, he's not that. But I think he's in the kind of the class of, he was a really good player at NC State, and hopefully he'll play on Sundays for a while as well.
This is along those lines. I have a bunch here. We're not going to get to them all, so apologize if you asked a good question and we don't get to it. Irving Upton 3 says, who's the best NFL player on this roster this season? Put your GM hat on and you're looking for somebody. You got to bet to get a second contract in the NFL. Who's it going to be?
I'd still go with I'd go with Casey Concepcion. I think Anthony Belton's got a shot. I was actually impressed with Zeke Correll. I think he played well.
Third team All-ACC.
I think we'll still see more. I'm excited what I see with Hollywood Smothers.
Very modern back in the Jahmyr Gibbs.
I'm not
more
seeing quite the same burst you see when you watch Jahmyr Gibbs, who is freakishly fast.
I'm just saying that he has style, not quality.
Yes, I think time will tell, but I think he's a guy that could play on Sundays, and I think we'll also see with C.J. Bailey.
At Rod2349, I don't know, a bunch of numbers. I'm going to read the compliments. Usually I skip the compliments if they say it, but I'm going to read this one. Love listening. Can you put out extra episodes for holiday travel in the car? And then this is why I like Rod. Rod's one of my guys. Parentheses, not to give you guys more work. Kind of. Now my real question. Can you both give your too early expectations for next football season before the typical NC State offseason hype gets carried away?
Yeah, I did look at. Have you looked at the schedule this year?
I have not.
It's not as easy as this year.
Well, that was part of the reason everyone was so excited this year, because you could work.
I know.
You could, after the Tennessee and Clemson games early, it felt like there was a lot of time to get everybody on the same page.
You look at it and you open with ECU, Virginia, Campbell. Okay, should start 3-0. Then at Notre Dame, at Duke, from now on it's not. Those dates aren't set. The first three are, but at Notre Dame, at Duke, at Miami. That's three tough
premier kind of ACC schedules.
Go away. You're home against Florida State. Will they get back to Florida State? Who knows? Georgia Tech at home, UNC at home, Virginia Tech at home, at Pitt, at Wake. I mean, that's
tough.
That's not an easy schedule. I feel that's why we thought this year was much easier.
Part of the reason why. Yeah.
We knew Clemson, we knew Tennessee were going to be tough. Everything else felt very winnable. You're looking at this schedule, and you're seeing a lot of losable games. Yeah. Now, I do think C.J. Bailey's going to take another step. I was kind of thinking about it last night. What does he need to go in the offseason working on? And honestly, I think he, for the most part, just has to build and get more reps and get more experience. I wouldn't say there's anything he is exceptional at, and there's nothing that I feel like he's bad at either. Like he throws it well. He's accurate. He's a great athlete. I will say that's the one thing that stood out to me. He's quick twitched. Like, he can move. I'd love to see him put on 15, 20 pounds if possible.
It's a physical development off season for him.
His footwork needs to improve some, but I just think he needs to build on and get more experience. So with him coming back, it's very exciting what could be, just because of what his ceiling can potentially be as well.
He's at a really exciting part of his career, which is, 80 hours in the facility. Like if you're not lifting, you're watching film, you need to build the leadership stuff. So you're organizing the throwing sessions, the 7-on-7s, you're crushing the muscle milks. You're like, it's
the feeling when he goes to spring practice this year, he's going to feel so much further along. He enrolled early last year. He's going to feel like a completely different player that is going to allow, rather than just trying to figure out the playbook, figure out the speed of the game, all that kind of stuff. He's going to be working on his own craft, and it's going to be more the mastering of it versus the learning of it. So it's a huge deal that he got the experience he got this year.
I would argue it'll be the most fun offseason of his career, because it's just everything is up, everything is improving, everything is it's mine.
And he's
now.
the guy, right? He's the guy.
Now.
This is my team. There's no question about it. Everyone's looking to him.
Receivers aren't going like, hey, can you ask Grayson how deep they want me on that break? They're going like, CJ, what do you want?
Yeah.
And you just get to customize everything to you like a well-worn hoodie. I think it's going to be a really fun offseason for him if he does what he should, and we have no reason to think he wouldn't. Do I have one more for you? Yeah, we'll do one more just because everybody's asking about it, and the portal opens in 5 days. It comes from our guy David. This is has loyalty to the coach gone away with the portal? The players out of the portal don't know the coach. The recruits are ready to abandon the coach. Is it truly every man for himself?
I think yes and no. Like, I think you kind of see both sides right now. You see Casey Concepcion get up and go. You see C.J. Bailey come back and commit right away. Could C.J. Bailey have gone somewhere that probably paid more money, probably is a higher thought of program than NC State? I'm sure the answer is yes to both, but I think there's obviously something that attracted him to coming back to the NC State, whether it's being the guy and his teammates, whether it's the coaches, Kurt Roper, Dave Doran, whether it's Raleigh, whether it's NC, who knows what it is, but there's clearly some sort of allegiance that he's showing to NC State, where KC, for reasons unknown as well, he felt like it was better to leave. So I think the answer is yes and no.
Here's my take. I've had this conversation, and I promise it'll relate back, about the NBA for years. People hate the super teams of I hate how now every NBA player just goes and pairs up with their friends and they make these super teams, and Bird would never, and all that kind of stuff. I like that they have the option to do it, because then I know which ones I want to root for. Like, if you have a great rookie contract in the NBA and your first thought is, how quickly can I get to the New York or LA market with 2 other All-Stars, that's your prerogative. I love that you're able to do that. I'm no longer going to be rooting for you. You're no longer one of my guys. Meanwhile, if you're Giannis and you keep committing back to Milwaukee and you're trying to win on your own and you get a championship built around you, I'm going to root for you. I have no reason to root for Giannis, but I kind of like just the way he's handled it, so now he's one of my guys. Dame Lillard was that way in Portland until he left, ironically, to join Giannis. So it's the same thing. Like, if you're a player who going into your senior years played for 4 programs and you've just constantly been give me the most money every offseason, I've built my brand, great. Like, life-changing money. I'm not gonna say you shouldn't be able to do that. I'm not going to be rooting for. I'm going to hope the NFL teams I support don't draft you. So like C.J. Bailey committing back to State, he's now a player that I appreciate more.
But I'll step in and say, we say that about Casey Concepcion. Casey did this last year for NC State. He was the guy that the fans loved, and he came back and showed his loyalty. And
then his loyalty was tested even more.
Right, and now he's gone. So, I mean, I just think for some guys, it's maybe there are some guys that are lifers at NC State and stay 4 years, or there's guys that stay 2 years and then end up leaving. Like, it's just I think every guy's going to be different.
I'm going to blow your mind here. Leaving a program doesn't mean you're disloyal to that program either.
Yeah.
There are players that will bleed NC State red for their entire life, and the coaches are even looking at them going like, listen, man, if you want to get more reps, if you actually want to play and not just take up a roster spot, I can make some calls to some Mac teams. Yeah. Like, it's just because players leave doesn't mean they're disloyal.
And the same goes for the other extreme, where it's a guy like Sam Hartman. I think Sam Hartman, if you were to ask him where he went to college, he would say Wake Forest.
Yeah.
He loved Wake Forest, and the coaches were like, you are dumb if you don't go to Notre Dame and take that money. So who knows? Maybe that's what Casey's going through. Maybe someone's offered him some ridiculous amount of money that's like, dude, you got to go get it.
Yeah, he may have gone into the coaches or to the collectives and said, here's the money they're offering me. You don't even have to beat it. Get close. Yeah. And they might have looked at him and said, no shot, buddy. When you're back in town, dinner's on you. Like, we don't know what happens behind the scenes. So there you go. That's Pack Therapy. Again, send your questions in on YouTube, and Mike may just answer them. We'll be getting ready for a bowl game. There will be portal talk. There'll be recruiting talk. I guarantee you, be some kind of coaching change somewhere that impacts NC State. So there'll be a lot to get to. It's not quite the off season; it's bowl season, but the off season's creeping in. We'll see you next time. Have a great weekend, everybody.